up, gamers, and welcome to the meta report for 14.7b. If this is your first time here, I'm a multi-set challenger player. I've been covering TFT for a very long time, and I do these meta reports pretty much every week. And what these meta reports will entail is I'm going to go through the data, go through each of the top performing comps here, let you guys know what the indicator to play these comps, when you should look to play them, and what are the strengths and what are the ways that you really want to play them and maximize your game so you can get a better placement and you can climb. All right, let's get into it. So the first two comps we have up here, we have it sorted by, I guess we have AVP, right? Sorted by AVP here, and the top two performing comps just by AVP with no context are actually the comps that got nerfed from last patch. So Ghostly Shin and Faded Aphelios Stretch. So let's get into those comps, and we're going to talk a lot about these top three comps, because these are comps that you definitely need to have in your rotation, because if you don't have them in your rotation, you're just hurting yourself in your ability to climb. So first up is Ghostly Shin. So if you guys played last patch, you should probably know how to play this comp pretty much. But this is a Senna primary carry with your Shin as your tank. And you're just going to be jamming Ghostlies when you level to 8. This is a slow roll on 6 composition. And you look to play this whenever you have an 80 item opener, and maybe you have like a Caitlyn 2 and a Senna drop, or you just have like a Jax 2 and 80 items and some snipers and that sort of thing. You can look to play this comp. I'll look to play it if I have those situations. And we look to play Senna, and we're going to slow roll for this. So let's talk more about this comp, because you need to know how to play some of the outs. If you see that other people are going to play this composition, or somebody's playing like Senna Gnar, and they're actually playing the Senna variation, not the Kindred variation, then it's going to be hard for you to hit a Senna 3-star. So if you see that is happening, then you need to be willing to play Kaisa. But even when you play Kaisa, you roll for this comp on 6. One of the strengths of this composition is that you can roll for this composition very easily on stage 3. And this composition is very stable on 2 stars, just having the Senna 2, Shin 2, and then hopefully you have a Jax 2 and maybe an Aatrox 2, maybe an Alawi 2. And surely we have our Caitlyn upgraded by now, right? Anyways, when you roll for that comp, then you need to scout around and make the decision on, are you going to play for Senna or are you going to play for Kaisa? If you look around, you see there's other Ghostly players, but they look like they're going to play for Kaisa, then you can still sit there and slow roll for Senna, because they're eventually going to sell their Senna. They're only holding 3 copies. You can easily hit a 2-cost 3-star with only somebody else holding 3 copies. So you can then look for the reroll in that position. But if you see you're contested and the other guy looks like they're going to reroll, then maybe you should consider playing for the Kaisa. The Kaisa is a little bit less consistent than the Senna version, I find. So if you can play the Senna version, look to play the Senna version instead. You're just going to jam 80 items on Senna. You know, it says IE, Last Whisper, GS. I'm a big fan of building a Spear of Sojourn on here. I just think it gives you a lot of tempo and is great for consistency in the early game. But maybe late game, a setup like this is more optimal. I'm not really sure. And then consider building Magic Shred in this build, because it does apply the Ghostly damage, but I think that's like a little fake. Just prioritize tank items and then making sure that your Senna can pump and making sure you have items to move to Kaisa. Also, Sojourn's a very good item on Kaisa as well. So there we go. Next up is Faded Aphelios and Thresh. So this is the classic that you guys played last patch. This comp has been nerfed quite a bit, but it's still pretty much just as strong. It was broken last patch, and now it's came a little bit down to earth, but still one of the best comps. So look to play this composition whenever you have like a Faded Crest opener, or you have like a 2-star Yasuo, 2-star Ahri, like a Giga opener, a Thresh drop. Forget about it. Usually you want to make sure you have a bow that you natural, at least one bow, because you do need a lot of bows in order to play Aphelios. Gigabyss is probably like Rageblade, Red Buff, IE, but that can be unrealistic in game. So just go for Rageblade IE +1. But if you can get the red buff, it is awesome on him. But yeah, look to play this if you have a bow opener with a Faded opener, or if you just have a Giga Faded opener. If you don't have a bow, it's fine. Forget about it. You're going to get so much tempo if you have a 2-star. If you have a 2-star Yasuo, 2-star Ahri, and a Thresh, you can actually look to just primary Syndra. Typically, you don't look to primary Syndra because one of the strengths of this comp is you get to roll in 7. And you can just spike earlier on in the game. And if you play around the early game Faded tempo, like you actually have the opener to play it, then it's just so consistent if you can have a strong opener around Faded and then roll in 7. It's just way easier to play it that way than to play primary Syndra. However, if you just have so much tempo and you're just not getting dropped bows, you're only getting dropped AP items, and like you're carrying a Kindred or something like that, and she's really taking you home, then you could totally go fast 8 and play more primarily for Syndra and then secondary Aphelios, or maybe just play a completely different build. That's acceptable, but Ideally, you want to play for Aphelios and you want to look for augments like Faded Emblems. The emblems are so good. And then any like attack speed based augments like Best Friends, Pumping Up, it's going to be good for you. If you take Pumping Up 3, just know that you're not going to benefit as much from the tempo that you usually get on stage 2 from Faded, because that augment is it's designed to not be strong in the early game. But as soon as you spike on that level 7 comp, once you get the 2-star Aphelios, the 2-star Thresh, and you get the 5 Faded online, then you're going to be very strong if you take Pumping Up 3 on stage 4. So just know if you opt into that, you will be losing some tempo. Okay, next up, we're going to be talking about Reaper, Yone, and Kayn. So I actually have a separate tab already pulled up for this comp, because this comp is a great comp to play, and I think everyone needs to know how to play this comp, because this is a great comp to play when you are like fucked. Like when like you think you're gonna go 8th, play this comp. Like you get no opener and you have no direction. Just look to play Yone, because it is quite a strong comp at 2-star, and you get to roll for it on 6 and 7, so you can roll early on in the game. You can also contest the other Yone players. You can be a little bit of a terrorist in the game, but if you get some tempo, man, Yone 2, if you can stabilize, Yone 2 a lot of times is strong enough to top 4. Last night I was in a game with Raditz and some other people in my game. There were 3 people playing Yone, and Ray went 4th with a Yone 2. He went fast 9 Yone 2. So you can definitely, I think everybody should learn this comp, because it's the best comp to default to if you don't know what to play. So the point of this comp is you just want to get to level 7, and I know this Wukong is here right now, but we'll talk about Wukong in a second. You want to get to level 7 and look for this exact board pretty much every game, minus the Wukong on level 7. 4 Reaper, 4 Heavenly. If we have a Heavenly Crest, that is great, because the more Heavenlies, the more better, because you start to get the benefit is much higher as you go up. And we're going to be playing this exact board pretty much most of the games. The only exception is sometimes you could swap out Malphite for Soraka. If you just get like over-indexed with AP items, then she's a great backliner. But if not, usually just generically we'll play Malphite here, and then we'll put your AP items on Kindred if you get a bunch of leftover Kindred items. But again, consider Soraka, but completely not necessary to play in this build. Okay, so let's talk about some itemizations and the strengths of this comp. So we're going to look for this comp on 7. You need to stabilize on a Yone 2 on stage 4. And we're going to be looking for items like BT, Titans, Runans. BT Titans is the best. And then the +1 option, it can be another Titans, can be a Runans, can be a Hodge, can be an Edge of Night, can be, honestly, sometimes a QSS is okay. But usually you want to look for a setup like BT Titans plus Runans, Hodge, or Titans. Again, obviously, if you have Gargantuan Resolve, you want to look for a double Titan setup. But I wanted to show this Runans tech, because this is started to be a lot more popular item on Yone lately. He does get a lot of AD from the Heavenly and just from his Titan stacks as well. So this has started to become a lot more popular, and is also a great item for tempo. If you slam this item on stage 2, it gives you a whole lot of tempo. It's difficult to slam it because you do need the cloak and the bow for Titans and BT. But if you just end up getting over-indexed with cloaks and bows, then do not be afraid to slam the Runans. You don't need to hold for the perfect Titans BT, unless you have Gargantuan. So I just wanted to show that here. And then the leftover 80 items are going to go onto a Kanye over here. And a setup like this is probably this: Hand of Justice, Edge of Night +1. And the +1 can be GS, Deathblade, Red Buff even sometimes. Probably not QSS. Your damage would be way too low. But yeah, a setup that looks like this. And then you'll put your Shred and your healing debuff on Kindred. You can also, on Nico. And you can also put... You could also put your healing debuff on Kindred if you wanted to. If you get just loads of extra bows, but a red buff, something like that, that can be fine as well. And then if you get a blue buff, like tears are not super powerful in this build, but if you get a bunch of tears, just put them onto Kindred. Put a blue buff here, because Kindred with a blue buff for Reaper mid game is quite strong at 2-star. And then as soon as you hit your Wukong, you just rotate this blue buff over to here if you didn't look for a Kindred 3. So the only 3 stars we really are necessary is Yone 3. However, you can look for a Kindred 3 and a Nico 3. Fine. Also, if you get the Nico hero augment, you could totally go for Nico 3. It can be quite strong in this. But now that we said augments, let's look at some augments over here. So you want anything that's going to enhance Yone's tankiness, survivability, and damage. So things like Gargantuan, Inspiring Epitaph, and then Heavenly Crest. As we said before, you just want to jam as many Heavenlies as you can. So one big strength of this comp is, if you, again, like I just said earlier, if you don't know what to play, this is a great comp to default to, because if you see that a lot of people are playing Yones, then you could just roll for this board, play the 2-star, and then start pushing levels and play more for Kayn. Like if you don't have a 2-star Kayn, go to 8 and look for a 2-star Kayn, and then go to 9 and look for your Wukong to take you home. And you could definitely top 4 that way. So I think this is a great comp that everyone should know how to play this. Because if your game is just doomed, look to play this and it'll save you some placements for sure. And also, you get to contest all the other people playing Yone, so you're going to hurt their placement as well. All right, next up, let's talk about Mythic, Kog'Maw, and Cho'Gath. So again, this composition is still performing quite well, even though Kog'Maw keeps getting nerfed. So yeah, I mean, you guys should know how to play this. You just play Cog. I mean, this is exact board right here. 1, 2, 3, 4 plus Caitlyn is what you're going to be playing, which you're going to be playing every game. And then primarily, we're looking for 3-star Kog'Maw, 3-star Cho'Gath, put tank items on Cho'Gath, put carry items on Kog'Maw, and you're going to look for a blue buff Nashor's +1. The +1 is usually Gunblade or Death Cap, not however, if you go to JG, that is okay. Especially if you have something like Jewel Lotus, you know, just to guarantee crit, that is okay. And generally, you want to look to play this composition whenever you have the Kog'Maw 2-star opener with you know, you just have the mythic opener, and then you get offered augments like Too Much Candy can be very good for you. So some reroll based augments, some economy based augments. What the thing I really like about playing this composition, also like it's going to be epic, that one. The thing I like about this composition is if you build for Kog'Maw, you roll for the 2 stars, and then it just doesn't look like you're going to get Kog'Maw 3. Kog'Maw 2 is really strong and can give you a lot of tempo on stage 3, and you can just push levels and look to swap out Kog'Maw for Lilia and look for more of a legendary style of composition, and then just jam mythics and legendaries once you get to 9. So that's something that you can do whenever you play this. Okay, next up, let's talk about Ink Shadow Kaisa. So we're going to talk about this comp just a little bit because this is not the primary variation of Kaisa. So look to play Kaisa carry in general whenever you're playing around either Ghostly or around Storyweaver and you get AD items. So that's the 2 ways you want to look to play Kaisa usually. Additionally, this variation, as you see, the play rate is really low because you need to have the emblem. If you want to go this variation, I would only go this variation if you get the emblem offered like on 2-1, or I guess if you're already playing around Senna and then you get the emblem offered, but you get this offered on 2-1 or 3-2 and you're already playing like Jax 2-star and you have a Senna on your board, then that could be something you look for, and then go into Vertical Ink Shadow, and you just want to get the 7 Ink Shadow whenever you do this, so more emblem, more better. And then you'll just play strong supporting units. So you can play like a Galio because he overlaps in your synergies, or just an Ornn, even though he doesn't have overlapping synergies with your dudes right here, just because he's such a beast. And just jam legendaries that fit in your comp, like Set fits in your comp, obviously, and Xayah. That's fine. And then look for items that look something like this. This is great. Spear of Sojin, i.e. Last Whisper. This is great. So that's a variation. The most primary variation you're going to be playing Kaisa in is going to be Bruiser, Kaisa, and Galio, or Ghostly. We already talked about the Ghostly variation, but the Bruiser one is one you definitely want to look for either when you're playing the Ghostly line, or if especially if you're playing around Storyweaver in the early game and you slam some AD items, like maybe you even item held Sivir and just remade her, or you item held what's his face, Bard got a small buff on this patch, so item holding for him is even better. And then what we're going to be looking for is we're going to go to level 8, and we're just looking for 4 Bruiser, 4 Trick Shot, pretty simple. And then our 9 is going to be Udyr, because Udyr is a beast, and that'll give you Ink Shadow as well on 9. So pretty simple. We'll have 3 Storyweaver with our Bruisers. And so just remember, play Aatrox here. He's not shown here. Aatrox goes in over Udyr, and then at 9 you play Udyr, and you'll be good to go. And you just jam. The win condition of this comp is a 2-star Kaisa. You go 9, hit the Udyr, and then Xayah, if you can get some items on her at 2-star, definitely could take you home. Okay, let's talk about Arcanist Lux. So this comp is still good, guys. This comp is still very good. I only look to play this comp if I have like a Giga Arcanist opener. Like I start the game with a Sojin and a Rod, you know, like, and I got some Lux drops. I'll look to play this, especially if I get dropped like I get like a Lux and I get dropped like an Amumu and a Lowy, and I have a Sojin. Forget about it. Let's go. So you could play this comp, but the only time I ever really commit to Lux is when I have this augment offered. I have the boiling point augment offered, and this is very strong. Just go Spear of Sojin and just like giga damage. Like I like going like Guardbreaker JG if you're going to play Vertical Arc, and then you just one-shotting the backline, especially with boiling points. Very, very, very good. So I really like this composition like that. And then you just want to jam Arcanist. You're going to be playing around a 6 Arcanist board with a Mumu and a Lowy. If you're going to reroll the Lux, you look for Lux 3, a Mumu 3, and a Lowy 3. Sometimes you go for Nico 3. That's good too. Zoe is on your board a lot of times, but Zoe is not worth your gold. So do not go for Zoe 3. Also, Zoe is just like a very contested unit in the mid game, especially for all the Storyweaver players. Your secondary carry is going to be Syndra, or I guess you could consider your frontliners to be your secondary carries. If you don't think you're going to 3-star Amumu, Alawi is a lot more tanky if you don't have a porcelain emblem. Just in general, I like to put items on Alawi when I play this comp. But if you do think you're going to 3-star Mumu and you're going and you actually get the bowling point augment, yeah, you can put the augment. You put the items here. Now, if you don't get the bowling point augment, you can still play Lux carry, but be very willing to just like, especially if you have a lot of tempo, if you don't get offered this augment on 3-2 or 4-2, just go, all right, let's just go 8 and play for Syndra. Syndra is super strong, and then once you can get Lysandra in, and once you can get set in, like this comp, it goes giga. And if you can go 9, you can even fit in 4 Warden and 6 Arc if you have an emblem. So just know that. Story Weaver. So Story Weaver is still good. If you guys have the giga tempo opener, just go fast 9 and then move items over to Aurelia. Pretty simple. If you want to go primary Kale carry, triple blue is really strong. You can't really do the second row tech anymore. They did nerf it, but there we go. We already talked about Ghostly Kaisa. I think this one will be pretty much the last one we'll talk about here. And this is going to be the Dryad, Narn, Kindred. So this comp is interesting because like a lot of people think this comp is really bad, but also sometimes it performs really well. I think this comp is just like so augment dependent. Like somebody like featherweight, like if you get like mulch at the beginning of the game, featherweights, a Dryad emblem. I've seen some like really high challenger players play this comp a lot to success, but also I've seen a lot of people just take this comp to a Giga 8th. So just be mindful of this. This is a variant I look to play if like there's a lot of ghostly player, like I have the ghostly set up and then I just keep getting dropped kindred items and get dropped kindreds and Nars. And I'm like, all right, screw it. Let's just play kindred. Kindred's so much fun. And you can look to play this. I think this comp is just like hard to play right now because kindred at 2 stars is such a contested unit in mid game from all the Yone players, from all the faded players. So like when you can get this comp online, it's really strong, especially if you get the emblems and mulched, but it's just kind of hard to actually achieve. So there we go. Story Weaver, Diana. I mean, this is not really Story Weaver. This is more of a like Dragon Lord Sage comp. I'm just not a huge fan of this comp. I don't think you should look to play this many games unless you're just like giga high rolling. And let's talk about Porcelain Ashe a little bit. So there's been some like data I've seen on Meta TFT where Ashe is actually performing super well at 2-star with 3 items. But I think that data is because she's played so infrequently at 3 items. Like the only time you have 3 items on her, like most of the time, is going to be if you have like the giga porcelain setup, like you have boiling point, you have porcelain emblems, like 6 porcelain is broken. And so if you ever get to that, you're going to have 3 items on Ashe. Also, if you have like loads of extra items and you're playing in a Aphelios 3 and you already have Syndra itemized, you already have Set itemized, you already have your Ornn itemized, but you're playing like weird portals and weird encounters to give you loads of items, and you put 3 items on Ashe, well, you're probably in an insane spot. So Ashe is weird. I think the best 4-cost AD carry is Kaisa for sure, most consistent, but maybe things will change. Maybe the meta will evolve and maybe Ashe will start popping up, but I'm just not an Ashe believer at this time. And the only comp I didn't talk about was Duelist. Duelist is very strong with the augments. So this is a comp that's good to play if you're looking to play Yone, but you just see so contested and nobody's playing Duelist, then play this. You hold a lot of the same units on stage 2 and stage 3. So just look to play this. Very good at augments like Keepers, Gargantuan, Combat Caster, Duelist Crown, Duelist Emblem, obviously Extended Duel, and you're just going to look for the 6 Duelist comp plus a Soraka usually on stage 4. You just have to roll for the 6 Duelist, and then we're going to go to 8. And once we hit our 3 stars, we'll go to 8, and we will look for like Dragon Lords like Diana. And if you actually get the full Dragon Lord comp online, like having actually the 4 Dragon Lord can be quite strong. But the base to generic is usually just play the 2 Dragon Lord plus the Altruist, plus the Soraka to give you Heavenly, and then you can jam a Wukong on 9. Can be very good as well if you're going to be playing 6 Duelists without an emblem. Can be quite good there. Anyways, guys, those are the composition. That is the meta report. Good luck climbing. Follow my stream. I appreciate you guys.